Hi again. This is another type of observational studies, and it comes in two phases. One of them is prospective. You are following the patient or the individuals. Let us say in this design, the individuals. We are follow the individuals prospectively. And another one I will show you in few minutes retrospectively. And don't mix it up with case control. I'll show you the difference now. So it's called a cohort design. From the cohort definition, which is group of people sharing something common between them, it's a cohort study. Number one, this is observational. We don't intervene. And what is common between the individuals we will be following in the next year or few years or according to the time frame you will adjust and write a new proposal. Those individuals are sharing a known risk factor or a specific exposure. Also, we can know the difference in risk. This is called incidence, the difference in risk of a disease over this time, the time we'll be following these individuals. Here we can calculate the incidence, not the prevalence, because we will be calculating the newly diagnosed patients. We'll start with individuals with specific risk factors or exposure and follow them over time to know if they will develop the disease under investigation or not. So those are newly diagnosed patients, and this is called incidence. Actually, it is the best observational design. And you will collect the data, as we said, in the most of the time prospectively, and I'll show you how it can be done retrospectively also. So for retrospective cohort design, you will start here. Here maybe it is today, okay? The individuals we will starting with are population, a sample that will be calculated, and they are free of disease. Then we will categorize them as factors. Hi again, this was an internet error, and we will be back to our presentation. Just a second. Here we are. So let me repeat this again. So in a cohort design, we will start here, say today, for example, the study begins here, and we will start with a calculated sample from our target population. We will assume that they are free of the disease under investigation. Then we will categorize them as factor present and factor absent. Maybe this factor is radiation exposure. And we will follow them over time and see those individual disease maybe develop leukemia. So we'll see how many of those who was exposed or directly exposed with high dose of radiation have actually developed leukemia at the time frame we had previously specified at the protocol. Let us say 5 years. And those who was exposed to the radiation, the high dose of radiation, but with no disease, didn't develop the disease during the time frame specified for our study. And also we will calculate how much of those disease have developed leukemia over time, who wasn't exposed to high dose of radiation, and also those who didn't develop leukemia and were not exposed to high dose of radiation. So obviously, this is cohort. We are following forward, right? So the time frame here, what we are talking about, a prospective cohort study. Prospective, we are looking forward. We are looking to the future, as illustrated here. Examining a future event or a condition or a disease that may happen in the future from a specific exposure. So at baseline, we will measure the exposure to know if it's present or not. And also, this is some sort of advanced design that you can also record the confounder variables. Like, for example, maybe the younger age are more prone to develop leukemia if exposed to high dose of radiation than the adults. So at baseline, at the beginning of the study, we should record the ages. We should record also if they are males or females. We should record also other suspected risk factor that may lead to the development of leukemia other than our main risk factor that we are measuring, our main exposure. All of these can be put together in something advanced called multivariable regression that will tell you if the radiation only had been associated or increased the folds or increased the chances of developing the disease or not. So this is in prospective cohort. While at retrospective cohort, oh, what has changed here? It is the same thing. There is the baseline, measuring the exposure and confounder, categorize them to exposed or not exposed, or maybe factor present or factor absent, then see the outcome that should be diseased or not diseased, and here also disease or not disease. But what have moved here? What have changed? The starting arrow, this yellow arrow. Let us take a look at the previous. Yeah, it's here in the left at the prospective one. But here it is at the right. Because at the retrospective cohort, you are starting today. And might start actually maybe from medical records that was documented for 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, or from 2015 till today. But we should go through the same process to be looking forward from the medical records that was documented from 2015 till today, for example. So in our example, the retrospective cohort, you can be using, as said, the medical records and measure the exposure and confounder from the record, and your baseline will be 2015. Then categorize these records to exposed and non-exposed, and measure the outcome if disease present or absent. And here at the non-exposed, the disease or outcome is present or absent. Get this? This is very tricky because I have always this question, always the learner asks me this: what is the difference between retrospective cohort and case control studies? Case control studies, we start from the disease. We have cases that are actually diseased patients and other controls that didn't develop this disease or don't have this disease. But in cohort, we start by exposure and then follow the disease. In retrospective cohort, we start from the exposure and follow the disease from medical records, for example, or registries. So this is the difference between retrospective cohort and case control, and also the difference between retrospective cohort and the prospective cohort is the time from the beginning of recording your baseline. Got this? So we are looking back at the time of the study event. It had actually occurred, but we don't know that. We don't know how many of them had developed the disease or not, or maybe how many are exposed or not. So we will start from the exposure or baseline at retrospective cohort. Yes, we looked backward the time today, and we are looking for those records that were on 2015, but we are looking then from the 2015 to 2020 or 2015 to today. This is very tricky, I know. I know. So we have mentioned that cohort studies are the best observational studies, right? Why? Because we can determine the exposure status before the occurrence of disease. So we can select the subject before disease detection. And also, this is really great because we can study several outcomes from each exposure. For example, the radiation exposure. The radiation may cause leukemia or other types of cancer, or maybe neurological disorders. There are lots that radiation can be associated with, right? So this is really, really brilliant design, but it has some limitation. Like, for example, it is really expensive to follow all these individuals, and also time consuming because you should follow for enough time to see if the disease will be detected or not. Also, also, it is not enough for rare diseases. Because if we started with a sample, maybe 1,000 individuals, and follow them over time, let's say 3 years, for detecting a rare disease, we will consume lots of human and financial resources to record that just 2 individuals have developed the disease. And also, there is a major limitation here. The losses of follow-up. Yeah, you maybe someone just had moved to another country, or not interested to be recruited in the study anymore, or just got fed up that he is receiving or they are receiving all these calls or study visits to follow up, and so on. So loss to follow up is really a major concern here in a cohort study. So this is about the last observational study in our plan.